The shadows on Elmwood Street. Benjamin Ben Miller was your typical 10-year-old boy, brimming with curiosity and an insatiable love for adventure. When the Miller family moved into a creaky, old Victorian house at the edge of town, Ben was the first to volunteer for exploring its dusty nooks and crannies. His father, Greg, shrugged off its eerie atmosphere, while his mother, Laura, nervously joked about its resemblance to a house from one of Ben's favorite ghost stories. The house had been vacant for years. Its peeling wallpaper, groaning floorboards, and faint mildew odor seemed to whisper forgotten secrets. Ben quickly claimed the small room on the first floor, which had an odd window that overlooked the overgrown backyard. Laura wasn't fond of the room's dim lighting, but Ben loved the way the sunlight barely pierced through the heavy, old curtains. On their first night in the house, Ben was awakened by whispers. At first, he thought it was the wind. But when he sat up in bed, his heart nearly stopped. Black, shifting shadows danced along the walls of his room, coalescing into unnatural forms that seemed to move with intent. The whispers grew louder, like overlapping voices speaking in a language he didn't understand. He blinked rapidly, hoping it was a dream. When he turned toward the corner of his room, his blood ran cold. A figure, tall, spindly, and draped in darkness, stood there, its head cocked unnaturally to one side. Its eyes glowed red, burning like embers, staring straight at him. Unable to scream, Ben scrambled under his blanket and squeezed his eyes shut. Eventually, the whispers faded, and the room fell silent. From that night onward, Ben began having strange, vivid dreams. In them, he was running through endless hallways of the house, the walls shifting and bending like a living creature. He could hear something chasing him, its guttural growls echoing behind him. In the dreams, he'd always end up at the door to the basement, a place his parents had told him to avoid because it was unsafe. Every morning, Ben woke drenched in sweat, convinced the house was alive. It wasn't long before Laura and Greg noticed changes in their son. Ben grew pale and lethargic, with dark circles under his eyes. He stopped eating much and spent hours sitting silently, staring out the window of his room. One night, Laura found him standing in the hallway outside his room, muttering to himself. When she touched his shoulder, he spun around with an expression she didn't recognize. His normally soft, brown eyes seemed darker, almost black, and filled with anger. "Leave me alone," he hissed in a voice that wasn't his. Terrified, Laura called Greg, who rushed over to calm their son. But when they turned to look at him again, Ben seemed normal. "What's wrong?" he asked, genuinely confused by their panic. One evening, Greg decided to investigate the basement. The strange noises they'd heard at night, the whispers, the faint scratching, seemed to originate from below. Armed with a flashlight, he descended the creaking stairs, leaving Laura upstairs to keep an eye on Ben. The basement was colder than expected, with an unexplainable dampness in the air. As Greg scanned the room with his flashlight, his beam landed on something strange, deep scratches carved into the walls, forming symbols he couldn't recognize. At the far end of the basement, he saw something that made his heart race. An old, wooden chair sat in the center of a crude circle drawn in what looked like dried blood. The air grew heavier, and Greg felt a sudden pressure on his chest. He fled upstairs, vowing never to return to that cursed basement. Things escalated quickly. Ben's behavior became more erratic. He began speaking in voices that weren't his own, sometimes deep and guttural, other times soft and melodic, like a child singing a lullaby. Laura woke one night to find him standing at the foot of their bed, staring at them with his head tilted at an unnatural angle. His lips curled into a smile, but his eyes glowed a familiar, terrifying red. "The house likes me," he whispered. "It says I belong here." Greg grabbed him and shook him, trying to snap him out of whatever trance he was in. But Ben just laughed, a chilling, echoing sound that didn't belong to a child. Desperate, Laura started researching the house's history. She discovered that the previous owners had vanished under mysterious circumstances. The house had a reputation in the town, a history of possessions, hauntings, and unspeakable tragedies. The most unsettling discovery was a photograph of the family who lived there in the 1930s. In the background of the photo, standing near the same room Ben had chosen, was the spindly, shadowy figure with red, glowing eyes. One stormy night, the whispers returned, louder than ever. The shadows in Ben's room coalesced again, but this time, they spilled into the rest of the house. Greg and Laura tried to get to Ben, but the door to his room slammed shut, locking them out. Inside, Ben sat cross-legged on his bed, his body trembling violently as the figure loomed over him. Its skeletal fingers reached out, pressing against his chest. Ben's screams echoed through the house as Greg and Laura pounded on the door, shouting his name. Finally, the door burst open, and they found Ben lying unconscious on the floor. The room was ice cold, and the figure was gone. The Millers left the house the next day, abandoning all their belongings. Ben eventually recovered, though he remembered little of what had happened. But the dreams never stopped. Years later, Ben returned to the house as an adult, driven by an inexplicable pull. The house still stood, its windows like dead eyes staring out into the world. As he stepped onto the porch, the door creaked open, and a familiar voice whispered from within. "Welcome home, Ben."